Hello and welcome to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17. That's right, we're on chapter 17 now, and this one we've titled The Evolution of Consciousness. We're going to talk about different kinds of consciousness. We're going to talk about the different ways in which consciousness affects our life. So let's get right into it. Consciousness is something that's been a mystery for a long time for a lot of people. The Cambridge Dictionary would define it in very earthly terms, or rather more practical terms. That's how most people understand it, as the state of understanding and realizing something. The Oxford Dictionary would say it's a person's awareness or perception to one's surrounding. That's not quite the spiritual understanding of consciousness. Spiritual consciousness might refer to something like this. Some would call it oneness or non-duality. And others would refer to it as, let's go back a step maybe. The typical understanding of consciousness in spiritual circles is the idea of non-duality or oneness. But to add to that, that's not the only perception in spiritual circles. The other one is that of divine love, the idea that we can have a divine loving relationship with consciousness, with the supreme consciousness, with the ultimate consciousness who is personified as Krishna, the all-attractive one, who some in most religions would call God, right? So, of course, then as that pure consciousness goes through our human mind, body, organism, it filters through, depending on what our levels of consciousness might be. And so that determines the sort of perception or points of view we might have, and the way we think, and the way we believe, and the way we act and we go about things, which then affects, of course, as you see, our beliefs, and then which affects our feelings, and which then affects our thoughts. So you see, it's a real trickle-down effect that consciousness has upon us. It's not just one size fits all. There's many different layers of it. The Bhagavad Gita sees consciousness in its influence upon us, in the way it affects us, in the way it deals, the way we deal with our daily life. Almost everything we do, from the things we believe, our faith, if you want to call it that, to the way we work, the way we relate, the way we do everything, right? So we're going to explore some of those things, and we're going to see how consciousness is such a powerful force in our lives that it's not something you want to be able to ignore. You really want to be able to understand its functioning in our world. So with that, let's dive into it. Bhagavad Gita chapter 17, text number 1. Arjuna asked Krishna, he says, "O Krishna, what is the situation of one who does not follow the principles of scripture or shastra, but who worships according to his own imagination?" So, a lot of people concoct their own version, their own reality. And I think all of us do. I do. Everybody else who's ever trying to approach the Gita is going to see it from their level of perception. They're going to see it from their understanding and their, there's so many different translations of the Gita, as you'll find. It can be very confusing for people because, each person has presented it according to their level of awareness, some of which we can relate to and some of which we can't. I remember reading about versions of the Gita in which there was a lot of talk about merging with the divine, that there is no individual self, that we just become one with everything, that in fact the actual reality is that there is indeed nothing out here. And that was very intriguing, mentally stimulating, and wonderful to perceive, and coming across the examples of people who had experienced this kind of oneness. But there was also another reality right staring in front of me, and that was the reality of the fact that we are individuated. Even as fragments of consciousness that we are right now, We are indeed individuated. We see the world differently. Our perceptions are different. And yet we can reach a state in which there is no difference between me and you. And at the same time, there is this difference. And so on the path of bhakti, in the path of divine love, the seekers do not seek to merge or be one with the divine. They seek to be separate from the divine so that they can have a loving relationship. Love requires two, not just one. And so one could say that the understanding of oneness is higher. One could say that the understanding of divine love is higher. That is not something I want to get into. I think it really is a matter of each person's seeking. What is it you seek? Are you seeking a place of nirvana, a place of liberation from this world, and that's the end result? Good for you, and I appreciate that. And there's a lot of merit in it, a lot of value in it. For me, that was never enough. I wanted to know what happens beyond that. What is life like beyond nirvana, beyond liberation? And to me, the answers came from the Gita and from the study of Krishna's life and the understanding that we can have a loving, beautiful relationship with God, a relationship that is full of joy and ecstasy of all different kinds. That, to me, was a vision of hope, something far more alluring than the vision of oneness. So, but each to their own, and I completely respect that. But now today we're going to look at consciousness in its earthly manifestation and how it affects us. And so let's look into what the Gita says about that. So Arjuna is asking that when people make up their own path, is such a person in the mode of goodness or sattva? Is such a person in the mode of passion or rajas, or in the mode of ignorance, tamas? And we've been in the earlier chapters, we've gone over what these are, so I'm not going to get into it, but there are different states of consciousness which affect how we think, feel, perceive, and act in the world. So, with that in mind, let's try to understand the answer that Krishna gives him. Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, so modes of nature being these three, goodness, passion, and ignorance, or sattva, rajas, and tamas, acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds: goodness, passion, or ignorance. According to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. People in the mode of goodness worship the demigods, the devas. This is important to understand. You have a lot of people who have material desires, but they want to better themselves as human beings. So they worship the devas, the demigods, right? And then there are people who are in the mode of passion. Now these people they have desires, very strong desires. They will do anything to get what they want. And so such persons will tend to approach all kinds of entities, all kinds of energies, whatever they can find that will give them their desired object, whatever that might be. I've known people like this to be able to engage in practices that can be far from idyllic. They will, in India, they call them the tantrics and others who do black magic and will do anything to help a person fulfill their material desires. And there are others in ancient time who would do great sacrifices and penances and austerities and engage in really difficult things so that they could fulfill their desires. So when we look at that, we understand that people who are in the mode of passion or rajagun will worship perhaps demonic entities, yakshas and rakshasas. That is the term given in the Gita. They will try to have entities who will try to bring about their desires by hook or by crook. No matter what happens, I have to get what I want. And that's kind of how they roll, right? And then there are those in the mode of ignorance who will worship ghosts and spirits. And you see this in some cultures where they worship the ancestors and where they will call upon various spirits to be able to help them fulfill their desires. I don't know when people call on spirit guides what they're calling on, but they could be calling on various ghosts and spirits as well. I have no idea what they land up with. In fact, they don't either. And the likelihood is that what they're creating could be very harmful to them. Then there are those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in scriptures, performing them out of pure egoism, lust, and attachment. So it's important to understand all these things because they affect us deeply. They affect how we go about our spiritual practices. I think one has to be very conscious and very aware that the practice you're doing is actually getting you the objective that you desire. If you're looking at engaging in spiritual acts, like a lot of people do, they go to the church or they go to the temple and they pray, God, give me this, give me that. And they want everything, some may want an airplane, others may want a big house, some may want just to get by. But whatever it is, look and see. What is it that you're trying to do? Some will fast, some will do difficult things, go to some holy place, go to a place where they have to and I've seen in India at least, they will do all kinds of rituals and practices from circumambulating by lying down and getting up, prostrating themselves, so to speak. And doing this like for miles. They'll do these difficult things. Some will fast for many days, some will fast for many months. It's incredible, the practices that are there all over the world. In some cultures, you'll see people flogging themselves. That too comes under the same thing, austerities, penances, things like that, to wipe out their sinful nature is what they try to say, to drive the devil out of themselves, as if by hitting their body they're going to do that. But yes, people will do all kinds of things. They are driven by the mode of passion and torture their bodily organs, as well as the Paramatma, the super soul, the presence of God, who is present in everyone, dwelling within them. So we can go to such extremes because our desires are so intense and we want so much to have these things. We'll do whatever it takes. Such persons can be known as asura, or evil. This is actually a very deep topic. I was reading a book by M. Scott Peck about the people of the lie, where he tries to talk about how the connection between evil and normal human people, and how it is something that is a force that affects even the most average person. It's not something uncommon. We are engaged in a deep level of selfishness and greed and desire, and that in turn deeply affects our consciousness. And so we have to be very aware. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I want what I want? What is it that I'm seeking? Why am I working so hard? What is my life all about? Am I just trying to survive? Am I trying to get by? All my ambitions, my desires? Again, nothing is good or bad, but the question to ask is why? Is it out of pride? Is it out of desire to prove something? Where are you coming from? And those are the motivations and desires that we need to be fully aware of. Now, we're going to look at the different things that affect and influence us, and we're also going to look at the different ways in which we affect and influence things. So one of the things that affects our consciousness deeply, whether we realize it or not, is food. Food is something all of us eat. So here Krishna talks about food of which all partake is of three kinds. According to the three modes of nature, the same is true of sacrifices, austerities, and charity. I shall tell you about the distinctions between these. Foods in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life. Foods in the mode of goodness they purify one's existence and they give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such nourishing foods are juicy, fatty, palatable, and pleasing to the heart. Now, typically, just to be very clear with you, those foods would be more vegetable-based, plant-based foods. In fact, in all spiritual cultures, this has been promoted that vegetable-based or plant-based foods are the best for the human being. But in the process of bhakti, we go one step further. We take the food that we eat, we prepare it for God, and then we receive that offering that we have given to God as prasad. Right? So that takes it even to a more spiritualized level. But at a more basic level, it is important that we minimize the violence that we are engaging in when we eat animal food and so on and so forth. It is said that every living being will subsist upon another living being. And this is true. But we want to minimize the damage of that. And so it has been found that, and I've extensively researched this, and there's a lot of material available here for that, our consciousness is affected by what we eat. People who eat foods that are in the mode of passion are driven in a certain way. People who eat foods that are in the mode of goodness, you'll find yourself, I've now been 40 years or more vegetarian and close to vegan by now. And I find that it has a huge effect on my consciousness, that it makes it so much easier to quiet the mind, to be peaceful. Because just to be able to do this, you've got to be able to resist all the other options that are being offered to you by other people, by the world, by all the advertising and everything else. You have to control your mind. You have to make choices that are not necessarily the easiest to make. But in doing that, you also learn to control all aspects of your mind. Now, that's just one simplistic understanding. But actually, the food that we eat when we are engaged in eating animals has a very dire effect on our consciousness. So let's read about that a little more. Foods that are bitter, sour, salty, pungent, dry, hot are liked by people in the mode of passion. Such foods cause pain ultimately for the body. It is stress and disease. So, ulcers and all that kind of thing if you eat very, very spicy food. And yet I've known people who are in their ripe old age, of 80s and 90s even, and still eat such food. But for the most part, I've known it to cause problems for people who eat this kind of food. Then we come to foods that are cooked more than 3 hours before being eaten, and which have become tasteless, stale, and putrid, decomposed and unclean. It's food liked by people in the mode of ignorance. Now, such food is pretty much what most of us are eating. Processed food. Food that has been given chemicals and has put other things in it to preserve it, and that has been cooked maybe months earlier, and now we are eating it later. It could be a bag of chips, it could be some chocolate, it could be anything. But the fact of the matter is that this is not fresh. Nor is it juicy, nor is it full of life energy. It is full of a deadness. It could be animal food that you're eating. The animal food also falls in the mode of ignorance. It creates within the person a tamasic state, a state in the mode of ignorance, which makes a person very insensitive to the pain of others. It doesn't mean that all people who eat meat are insensitive, but for the largest part, it makes you aggressive. It has an influence on you. You might be able to fight that influence. You might be able to be a better person despite that. But it has a very powerful effect on anxiety, on depression, on your state of mind, and even in terms of the ways you're able to feel a sense. So you may feel very passionate and very much like doing things. And yes, that's true. It produces that kind of aggressive energy. But in the end, it's a big toll upon your soul and upon your consciousness. It becomes very hard for you to proceed on the path of compassion and empathy and kindness and self-love. And definitely very hard to proceed on the path of loving God. Some would argue that everything on this planet was given to us for our enjoyment. Well, at least that's how they interpret the word, having dominion over all creatures. But dominion doesn't mean enjoyment. Man is also, in the Bible, said given dominion over his wife. It doesn't mean he eats his wife. Those kind of interpretations are very false. To have dominion means to protect all creatures. And that is our natural instinct. If you have a dog, you wouldn't want to eat it, right? And if you can not eat a dog, then why would you eat a cow? Why would you eat a goat? Why would you eat a fish? I remember a time where maybe I was, I don't know, 10 years ago, moved to America, and I was thinking, God, Rohit, you got to ease up, you got to eat some fish sometime. And then I saw these people pulling the fish out of the water. And it was horrible to see that fish suffocating, squirming, trying to die. I was imagining myself being put in the water and drowning, what that must be like for a human being. And it's the same experience that fish was having when it was being pulled out of the water. And I think it's important for us to face the very thing that we, ingest within our body. You take our children there, go there ourselves. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with killing that animal? Are you okay with killing that fish? Are you okay with it? And have you really felt into it and tried to understand the pain of that creature? It's incredible to understand it and to feel it and to experience it. And once you do, especially if you went to a slaughterhouse. I remember at the age of 7, my father taking me to a slaughterhouse. That's where we used to get the meat from. First 20 years of my life, I ate meat. And it was horrific to see him pick out the animal and then have it slaughtered and then have it cut up and then be offered to us to take home. I was like, what? Is this what I've been eating all along? And then time went by and I forgot all about it and went back to eating meat as everybody else around me was doing. But by the time I was 20 years old and I came across devotees of Krishna and I understood why it is so damaging to the consciousness, to the body, to the environment, to the planet, it was enough. I stopped. That was it. So it's been a long time since then. But I do recommend that you look into it further. And if you have been, it's not a question of making anyone feel guilty. It's a question of having you examine choices, effects, and try to choose what is best for you. All right. We'll take it from there. Yajna, that is called sacrifice or worship. Now, we all engage in some kind of worship. You may say, well, I'm an atheist. I don't sacrifice or worship anything. Well, the fact is you do. You worship, you either sacrifice to take care of yourself, your country, your family. You might be sacrificing to be able to do something for your job. There is always a sacrifice you are engaging in. And worship, there's always something you worship. It could be someone who you love. It could be your children. It could be your nation. It could be your constitution. I know a lot of people who are very fanatical about their national identity or their political parties. This is all worship. Your movie stars, your pop stars, your musicians. We worship them. And if we get to be in their association, we feel so thrilled, we feel so privileged. We've never looked at the consciousness of this person, but hey, we just feel like this is worship. So in the absence of worship of God, we seek other entities or beings. And today, of course, the big thing has become, well, I am God. You're God. We're all God. So now I can worship myself. I can engage in this narcissistic self-adoration. That's become the new version of worship. And any form of worship that you engage in has its consequences. So let's take a look at how we go about how this affects us. Krishna is saying that sacrifice or worship, yajna is the word used in Sanskrit, performed according to duty and according to scriptural rules, with no expectation of material gain or reward, is in the mode of goodness or sattva. So now, if you are a person who engages in, let's say, going to the temple, or if you go to the church, or you go to any other religious place, and if you do worship out there, is it with a desire for material gain, or is it purely for the pleasure of God? Because if you are engaged in, what can I get out of this? I'm going to put in $5 today and I want to earn, please help me earn 5 million. That's some pretty cheap bargain there. $5 to get 5 million. or to save my life, or to make my health better, or to make me find the right partner for my life. No, no, you can't you can't bargain with God like that. Come on. That is not how this works. It's like going to the king of the country and saying, here's $5. Will you find me a wife? Hey, if you couldn't do that with the king or the president of the country, you can't do it with God. When you go with your material desires, that's why Krishna is saying that people who are in the mode of goodness, well, they should go to the devas, they should go to the demigods, not come bother God. God should not be bothered with these things. But yet that's what most people do. So check and see, what is the motivation you have when you go to worship, when you go for any kind of practice, any kind of spiritual practice that you engage in. Now, the sacrifice or worship that is performed for material gain or performed ostentatiously out of pride is in the mode of passion or rajas, because it is about material desire. It is about wanting something of this world from God, who is not of this world. Better you figure that out in this world itself and try to find ways in this world to get what you need, rather than going to God for that. Then people get disappointed. I prayed, I did this, I chanted this, I performed these austerities and so on, and I didn't get what I asked for. That's not God's business to sit around there listening to the prayers of everyone and answering and fulfilling their desires. God is not your order supplier. God is not your Amazon or your DoorDash or your some kind of thing that gives you whatever it is you want. That is not God's business. When we come to God, we come for God. I come to you for you. It's like it's like when you come to meet a friend and you want to come there and use them for something. Is that why you make friends? And would your friend not see through it? Or you want to find a lover or a partner or a husband or a wife, and you go to them because of what you can get out of them. They'll see through that very quickly. Now, if they're rich and if they're famous and you come with that desire, they'll see through it even better. And do you think God is not aware that you're coming there for those kind of things? Yeah. Keep in mind, that is not the intention. The idea, the intent of approaching God in any form is for our spiritual welfare, for our spiritual upliftment, for freedom from this earthly condition, and to be uplifted to our true spiritual state. And for those who are on bhakti, that would be for love of God. Help me clear the obstacles within me that are preventing me from loving you, from having a quiet mind, from being able to reach out and devote myself to my spiritual practice. Yes, that is worthy. That is worthy prayer. But it's not about, hey, give me this and give me that. What can I get out of you, God? You sound like a cool dude. And of course, that sacrifice or worship performed in defiance of scriptural injunctions, in which no spiritual food is distributed, prasad, no hymns are chanted or mantras, no remuneration made to the priests, and which is faithless, is in the mode of ignorance or tamas. There are many personalities who engaged in various things like this, and at least in India, we have lots of them. In the Western world, I see them as well. Many of them are really engaged in calling on anything and everything they can to be able to fulfill their desires. The desires for material gain are so strong, and we encourage it so much. We see a person's worth and value dependent upon what they have, the car they drive, the house they live in. We say this person is successful, this person has arrived, this person has succeeded. No, they haven't. Just because they have millions of dollars doesn't mean they've arrived. It doesn't mean they've achieved. It doesn't mean they are successful. No, not at all. That is only a measure of ignorance. True wealth is found within us. True wealth is our spiritual self. True wealth is our connection with God, our connection with the divine, our connection with Brahman or with Krishna. True wealth is our spiritual awakening. And to the degree we are awakened, we really care little about what we have. The fakir, there is a beautiful song, Vava Moja Fakiradi. The fakir has no interest in anything of the world. He's happy with whatever comes of its own accord and satisfied and blissful, regardless. That is the state of enlightenment. That is the state of pure joy. And that is the state we all desire. We all want to be happy, and we are thinking that the stuff of this world is going to give us what we desire. But it never has, it never will. For that end, we may engage in much austerity. We may work hard, that's also austerity. We may do tapasya, as in, go to many difficult places and study things. And tapasya means austerity. We do really hard work. And austerities, of course, for monks might look different than it is for people in the world. Someone who's a monk, for them it might be that they engage in all kinds of prayer and chanting and fasting and all kinds of meditations. And for a worldly person, it might be hard work, and it might be the things, where they put in so much of effort, maybe working day and night, 16, 18, 16-hour days, I hear from people. And, they can really put in the time. The austerity of the body consists of worship to the Supreme Being, the Brahmins, the Guru. This is the real austerity, okay? The real austerity is where you engage your body in worshipping God or the Supreme. The Brahmins, that is the priests, the teachers, the Gurus, the ones who you learn from, and the worshipful personalities such as father and mother. See, these are things that the Western world doesn't seem to have. By the time people become teenagers, they have no respect for their father and mother, or for their teachers, or for any priests. But in the Vedic culture, there was a lot of respect given to the father and mother who birthed us. Tremendous respect to the guru who teaches us, whether it was the guru of our school or whether it was the guru who taught us spirituality. That, of course, being the ultimate guru. Or the priests, the Brahmins. And ultimately of God. So true austerity of the body is to engage the body in honoring these beings. Just as when your parents get older, you take care of them. That's just one simple way where you use your body to serve God or the Brahmins or the Guru. Furthermore, cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, nonviolence are also austerities of the body. Celibacy doesn't mean you have to become a celibate monk. It simply means that from time to time, you engage yourself in restraining your senses, in restraining the urges. It's not all about engaging your senses in enjoying everything. No. It's not that you shouldn't enjoy, and it's not that you should devote yourself to enjoying. Right? So it's about finding that balance between enjoyment and between control, until gradually you learn self-control and you learn how to be able to do that which is best for your body, for your mind, and for your consciousness. See, for example, you may have never fasted, but when you do learn to fast, you learn what an incredible thing this is, how it purges and cleanses your body, how it even changes you find that gradually the desire to eat goes away, and gradually you get uplifted to a different state of consciousness. It has a huge impact. And so these austerities are actually something that are designed to help us uplift our state of mind, to help us control our mind. They're not just random things that we engage in for the sake of torturing ourselves or some such thing. And there is austerity of speech, which involves speaking truthfully, beneficially, and avoiding speech that offends. One should also recite the Vedas regularly. So reading the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam or any of the Vedas, reciting them. Reciting is very important because what it leads to is being able to Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and speaking. As you listen to yourself reciting the mantras or the Vedas themselves, those words then become remembered. Shravanam is listening. Kirtanam is speaking or reciting, and then Smaranam is remembrance. You begin to remember as you read aloud. And I used to do that in school. I remember when we were in high school or even earlier on, when we'd read it aloud, it was easier to remember. The same applies to reciting the Vedas regularly. Austerities of the mind include satisfaction, learning how to be satisfied with whatever you have, learning to be content rather than always seeking more and more and more. Simplicity, yes, learning to have a simple life, or in some people now, I think, use the term a minimalistic, right? Simplicity. Gravity, that is seriousness, some amount of seriousness and self-control. All these things are austerities of the mind, and ultimately purity of thought. Purity of thought is very interesting because what it refers to really is being able to think by choice. What is it I want to think? Purity of thought is being able to focus or direct your mind. Where do you want it to go? If it's thinking about thoughts about judging others, do I really want to be judging others? Really making the better choice? Do I really want to be judging myself? Purity of thought is learning how to say no to your mind and prevent it from going in the places where it wants to go and taking it where you want it to go. You're the boss of your mind. You're the one in charge. Never forget that. This is your mind. Your mind. You do not belong to your mind, nor are you your mind. You're the one that has a mind. You're the soul who has a mind and needs to be able to direct it in the direction you want it to go. So that is referred here as austerities of the mind. This threefold austerity practiced by those whose aim is not to benefit themselves materially, but rather to please the Supreme, is of the nature of goodness. Those ostentatious penances and austerities which are performed in order to gain respect, honor, and worship are said to be in the mode of passion. They are neither stable nor permanent. Think about that. People engage in austerities and sacrifices and penances, and they hope to be able to have material gain. But that material gain is neither stable nor permanent. It is constantly going to change. There is always going to be more and more and more. So ultimately it becomes like chasing a mirage. You think you've finally got the thing you wanted, and in a little while that thing becomes old, and I think in a little while there's something better, and then you discard that which is there, and so much of our stuff is landing up in trash heaps. Mountains and mountains and mountains of trash have been accumulated by human beings. Why? Because we are on this endless treadmill of wanting more and more and more. More is better. That's the credo that they've sold us. More is what makes the economy run. And we are the ones who are chasing that more, being completely taken in by the advertising and all the wonderful, lovely gadgets and gizmos and clothes and fashions and whatever have you. Or like a puppet on a string, being dangled, or a donkey that has a carrot in front of it and is chasing that carrot, or a person chasing a mirage. No different in that. We are being manipulated and controlled all the time. And we think we are free. Absolutely not. We are far from free. We are neither free of our mind, nor are we free of our desires, nor are we free of the longings of our body, nor are we free of the advertisers, or of the country, or of its laws. Where are we free? Who says we are free? We are not free of time. We are not free from death. We are not free from old age. We are not free from disease. We are not free. Real freedom is spiritual freedom, moksha. And when that happens, then nothing matters in this world. Nothing at all. Right? That's that place. That is the place of freedom. You cannot find freedom in this world. Freedom is when you go beyond not only beyond your body and your desires, but also beyond your mind. And you come to that place where, as my little niece once told me when she was 3 years old, nothing matters. She's not 3 now anymore, but it was this beautiful thing I learned from a little girl, and it has stayed with me all along. A child who knew the truth that nothing matters. And that's the place we need to come to, where neither our emotions matter, nor our thoughts matter, nor our beliefs matter. You think it matters what you believe? No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter what you belong to. It doesn't matter what your identity is. It doesn't matter what your ego says. It doesn't matter what you have. None of it matters. And the ultimate teacher that teaches us that is death. That is the greatest gift we've been given. It teaches us the ultimate reality that nothing in this world matters. Because nothing goes with us, and that's it. These penances and austerities which are performed foolishly by means of obstinate self-torture or to destroy or injure others are said to be in the mode of ignorance. Then there is dan, or charity. We all engage in some form of charity. Sometimes we give to some organization, sometimes we give to a temple or church, sometimes we give to a homeless person on the street. But let's take a look at what kind of charity is actually helpful. Or sometimes it's a gift and is given out of duty at the proper time and place to a worthy person, and without expectation of return is considered to be charity in the mode of goodness. So read that carefully. The main point being without expectation of return. Worthy meaning someone who is deserving of that charity, either because they've done something wonderful, like someone who is an enlightened being, someone who is teaching you, someone who is worthy because they're a Brahmin, or perhaps if they are actually hungry or needy, or in some situation where they need some help, sure. But without expectation of return. Then there is charity performed with the expectation of return, with the desire for karmic results, or in a grudging mood. That can never be good, right? This is said to be charity in the mode of passion, or rajagun. Again, because it is motivated, there is an agenda, right? And wherever there is an agenda, that is never pure. That is never a wholesome place. When I do something for someone, but I have an agenda behind it, I want them to be my friend, I want them to love me, I want them to think that I am a great person, then that is an agenda. And when there is an agenda, it is not pure. And that giving, therefore, is tainted by my wanting something out of it. Charity performed at an improper place and time and given to an unworthy person without respect and with contempt is charity in the mode of ignorance. And finally, the words Om Tat Sat. A very important little piece in here. A very important piece in uplifting our consciousness. From the beginning of creation, the 3 syllables Om Tat Sat. Okay, please try and pronounce it correctly. It is not tat and it is not sat. It is Om Tat Sat. Ta. Ta is the sound that is not there in the English language, and so it's a little difficult, I understand. Om Tat Sat. These 3 syllables have been used to indicate the Supreme Absolute Truth, or Brahman. Om Tat Sat. Even before we begin this Bhagavad Gita, we begin with Om. And we begin all processes, all chanting with Om. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am Omkar. I am Om. That is the original, the primeval sound of the universe. Like the Bible says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was Om. According to the Vedas, that original sound was Om. That's what Brahma heard, and then he begins the creation. Om Tat Sat was uttered by Brahmins while chanting Vedic hymns and during sacrifices for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Thus the Transcendentalists undertake sacrifices, charities, and penances, beginning always with Om, to attain the Supreme. One should perform sacrifice, penance, and charity also with the word Tat, may it be so. That's the explanation. Om Tat Sat. The purpose of such activities is to get moksha, of freedom. So the sacrifice you do, the penance you do, the charity you give is not for material gain, but is for getting moksha, of freedom from the cycle of birth and death. May it be so. Om Tat. You're calling on the divine. Om, God. Tat. May it be so. May you attain that moksha. May you attain that presence of God. Freedom from material entanglement. The absolute truth is the objective of sacrifice and is indicated by the word Sat. Those works of sacrifice, penance, and charity, which are true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Being. However, sacrifices, charities, austerities, and charities performed without faith in God are impermanent, regardless of the rites that are performed. They are called asat and are useless. So with that, we end chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita. And I would love to know your thoughts and what you made of all of that. There's a lot in here. But most important, before I hand it over to you, is to contemplate the idea that always look at what is the intention I have behind what I'm doing. If you're reading something, if you're chanting something, if you are worshiping something, if you are praying in any way, if you are calling on God, or if you are trying to attain liberation, what is the agenda behind it? If the agenda is even to become free of suffering, that's still a personal agenda. See? There's still a motivation behind it. Oh, this world is full of suffering. I just want to get out of here. There's an agenda. It is not a pure motivation. I want to commune with the divine. I want to either be one with or to love God. That is a pure motivation. But when it is that I just wish to become free of suffering, I just wish to get out of this cycle of birth and death, there's still a personal agenda. Can we rise beyond that? Can we conceive of a possibility in which I want the Supreme only for its own sake, not because of something I will gain out of it, either peace or prosperity or freedom or whatever else it is that I think I'm going to get there. It is better to approach the Supreme with that agenda of moksha or liberation or freedom than to not. But much better than that would be to actually be nishkam. That is no desire. I approach you for you. It's just like a friend, right? If I want to have a friend, I want to have that friend because I like you for who you are. When I want a lover or a partner or a spouse, I love you for who you are. That is how we all want to be loved. That is how God wants to be loved. That is how we need to approach at the highest level, if we can get there and be so inspired to do so. All right, so with that, let's move on to seeing what the rest of you have been thinking about. And for that, I'm going to switch over. Okay. So yes, any particular thoughts that you might have, either share them in the text or come on screen and let's talk about it. What are your thoughts? What do you think about this? Anyone?
Rohit, I have a thought. I think just speaking on the last idea you shared, just the idea of what would my intentions be, and how pure they are, what exactly they could be. I know from I believe a bit from where I come from, because I hear you, and it's the idea of like for God, and it kind of personifies a you. And for me, what works, I kind of want to get your ideas on this. And I guess this would be more of a Yogananda idea that I'm familiar with, because I think about in autobiography, there's this idea of Maya and the whole illusion. And one of his, it's actually the meal prayers. It's one of the sayings that really speaks to me is guide me from the unreal to the real.
Yes. Asato ma jyotirgamaha. Take me from asat to sat. Take me from the darkness into the light.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I don't know. I think it doesn't always get to be a God and personification, but it turns into that sort of an idea.
Because when you're saying when you're calling out, you're referring to something that can actually listen to you. And the question then is, what is listening? Right? Who is listening out there? And if that which is listening to you can understand you, then is it personified or is it not? If you prefer it not to be personified, fair enough, no problem. It can be just an energy. It can be a light. God can be whatever you want God to be. Right? Want God to be an old man? God can be an old man for you. But if you want God to be nothingness, that's fine too. However you approach, however, the intent is what we were discussing here, and that intent is very important. Are we coming from an intent that is based upon something you want just personally for you? Like when you say, I just quoted it to you, tamaso ma sadgamaya, right? So I want to go from tamasa into sad, which is the truth. Why? That's the question. Right? Do I want that because I want relief from this world, or because I am so captivated by that truth, by that light, by that presence, by that being, whichever way you want to look at God, doesn't matter, that I am just drawn helplessly like a moth to a flame? That is the true calling, right? So why is it and how is it that you go about wanting to approach God? That is the question that I'd like to bring before you.
And that was directed to me?
Sure.
Okay, yeah. That's kind of what happens is I think for me, I just take the idea so wide because the personification makes sense. Like I could develop that, there is that bhakti there for you, but then all of a sudden, depending on what it does, like things start entering my mind, and almost like when I keep it broad, there's really an I don't know. I don't know if it's you. I don't know if it's this, because all of a sudden it helps keep my mind blank just with this I don't know. But then,
and that's a wonderful place to be, by the way. I don't know is a place of openness. I don't know is a place of curiosity. I don't know is the place where all of us can go as we begin to explore our spiritual journey. I don't know is a place of deep spiritual inquiry. So perfectly all right. Yeah, I get that. At the same time, if there is a sense of personification, if God, according to you, could be a person, then it's worth inquiring further. If God is a person, then what kind of person is God? And if so, could you have a relationship with God? And because now you want to know that supreme light, that supreme being for itself. Now it's like, who are you? How can I get to know you? How can I get to experience you? How can I get to love you? That becomes the inquiry, the seeking, the desire. And if you have that desire that will be revealed to you. It is not that there is no reciprocation. It's not that you're just calling out into the wilderness. No, not at all. You are calling and exactly what you seek, but be clear what you seek. That is very, very important. Right? And according to your seeking and according to your desire, you shall find. That's the beauty of it. All right. Anyone else? Any other questions? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, what you make of this. It's definitely a very deep inquiry. It's a deep search. And each one of us has our own unique searching in that. The reason I'm able to bring together both of these is based upon the teaching of Chaitanya, where he would talk about how we are simultaneously one with God and different from God. So the idea is not either or, it is a both and understanding. We are simultaneously one with God and yet different from God. We are merged with the oneness of it all, and yet we are individuated. God is simultaneously an energy and a light and a being at the same time, simultaneously. So when we talk of one or the other, we're in our heads, and our heads are trying to figure out, is God energy or is God a person? Like, come on. God is anything God wants to be. That's the bottom line. And God is everything, and God is nothing, and God is all. And if you don't want to believe that, that's fine too. Experience the world without. So somebody who's an atheist doesn't want to believe any of this, fine. Then experience a world in which there's no God and see how that is. And if you're liking it, good for you. But if at some point it doesn't make sense to you, and if at some point you want to be able to figure out, why am I here? What's this all about? Why do I have to go get old, diseased, die, go through all of this suffering and everything else? Well, then now your journey has begun into finding out the deeper mysteries of life, going beyond that which, just the earthly plane. When you have gone into this world and tried to squeeze everything out of it, and come up empty-handed, is when the real search begins. Now, you may have done that in an earlier lifetime, or you may be just about getting there in this lifetime. But I know in my case, I was seeking from a very young age. Perhaps some of you were seeking from a young age as well, trying to know. Perhaps you rejected the religion of your time or that you grew up in, and perhaps you began to say, there's got to be more. And I know a lot of you here have had that experience. And if so, it's a wonderful thing. And then that seeking has led you here into inquiring deeper and further. So really honor the fact that you're here. This is not a small thing, and in that to really come to a place where this is a place of the heart. This is the place of love that brings us all together in our seeking. Thank you for being here. All right, one last time. Any final thoughts, opinions, questions? We're open to it all. Rima, I hear you unmuting.
You just said something that is, sorry, Rohit, that you said something that's still kind of ruminating about. You said you have to go with clear intention of what it is that you are seeking, and according to that you will find.
Yes.
Help me understand that more.
You know something? There's a lot of people who say desire is a bad thing. They think that, to have desires is, we have to overcome our desires. I believe that desire is an aspect of our soul. That same desire can be moved towards worldly things or spiritual. The ultimate desire is to desire the divine, to desire God. That is the ultimate fruition of desire. But desire must be there. If you want to, let's say, do what the world calls be successful, if you want to have ambition, if you want whatever, then you've got to give it a shape, a form, right? You got to say, I want to have this big house, somewhere in some really fancy neighborhood, gated community, big, beautiful limousine or a car or something like that, and a chauffeur, and I want to have. So there's ambition, there's desire. If there was no desire, then you would not want to have anything. You would not matter, right? You would just, if it was just you were struggling to survive, and many people do, then that's the level at which you're at. You're seeking, your desire is to survive. But there are those who seek to have so much that there is abundance. And then there are those who realize the futility of even that. And they realize that, from wealth they might go to power. And then from power they may realize even this does not satisfy. And then they desire something more, peace. And beyond peace, then as you go, you come to the place of understanding what is God, what is that divine source, what is that place where peace never stops. Peace is not something. So the desire is what leads you there. The seeking. We say a spiritual person is a seeker. To seek, you must desire. You must desire something. If you want to go beyond desire, yes, but that is going beyond material desire. Now you have a spiritual desire. A spiritual desire is seeking. And so that's what one ultimately has. Just as we all seek love, you can seek love in this world and you may get it. But ultimately you realize that whoever you love, you leave behind, or they leave you behind, right? Everybody dies, everybody goes. That love is not forever, no matter how much we may believe in forever love and eternal love. Our longing is for eternal love. That longing is only fulfilled with God. Similarly with happiness, similarly with peace, similarly with freedom. All of this, the real true fulfillment of our desires is with God. Never in this world. So desire is very important. And so what you're seeking must be questioned. Why am I seeking what I'm seeking? What is it that I'm wanting? And how can I best get there? Did that answer your question at all, or?
Gave me more to ruminate about.
Give you more things to think about?
Mm.
Okay. Give me your last thought, then we'll wind up, before we wind up. So what is give me one more thing you thought about.
No, I'm not elucidating any.
Okay.
I just will
All right, then write it down, and when you come next time, bring it up. I would love to have your thoughts. We are moving into the 18th chapter, the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. I'll probably have to break it up in 2 parts. It's really big. And then we'll start the Srimad Bhagavatam after that. So I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care. Jai Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Rohit. Jai Shri Krishna.